I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling. Shouldn't be trusting me, I could be making it all up, you know. Control, you don't know me. I'm a danger to myself.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. So how are you guys doing today? How was your weekend? I hope you guys had a great Easter. We did. It was freezing here, and there's actually snow on the ground today. So, you know, that's always fun. It's supposed to be nice, and it's not. But I hope you guys had a great Easter, and thank you again for being so patient with this case. There's just so much, and I wanted to do it right. After the last two videos that I put out last week, which were basically updates on current cases, which I do like to get out first because some people are waiting on those, you know, because they're current. But I lost my voice and I was unable to speak for about 3 days. I almost made one the other day, but I still sounded like a bullfrog and my voice kept skipping out. And I know people are very like, when it comes to how loud we are when we present cases. So I'm good to go, and without any further ado, I want to jump right on into it. So if you are new here, welcome, and I hope that you enjoy. I hope that you subscribe. I hope that you comment, and I hope that you like. If it's interesting enough to share, go ahead and do that as well. I want to start out also by saying that there is some graphic content in this. Most of my videos, they're true crime, so there will be some graphic things. I will post things throughout the video to kind of remind you in case you want to scroll through, but just saying right from the start, this is a very tragic and graphic case. I will not be posting any photos of Kendrick's face or anything like that. I know they are circulating everywhere, but I have said I will not post those here. Other photos I will, though. So just so you're aware. All right, let's go. Voila! I changed my clothes in a matter of seconds. All right, so in this video, we're going to be taking a closer look into some of the surveillance videos, what's in them, what's not in them. We will also be going into more of the family suspects and discrepancies as well as evidence or lack thereof. We will look into some of the allegations from that the Johnson family has made. And now I'm having some issues uploading long videos on YouTube. It sometimes takes 7, 8, 9 hours for my longer videos to upload, pushing them like a day behind, basically. And so I'm going to be doing shorter videos from now on. I'm going to try not to push them past 45 minutes. So these larger cases may have more than one video to them, and that's why this one is in parts, but they're going to be even smaller parts. So we may have a part 4. We'll see. So starting with these surveillance videos on January 10th of 2013, which is the day before Kendrick was found. In this surveillance footage, you can see that there are other students in the gym when Kendrick Johnson enters. He isn't alone in there. So the question is, how did no one see him enter the mat, or at the very least hear him calling for help when he was inside of it and realized that he couldn't get out? There were kids playing basketball at the time. You know, it's a gym, it's echoey. So it is possible that they couldn't hear. I mean, we've all been in a gym. You're here, the basketball bouncing, kids shouting. It was a passing period. So, you know, kids are coming in and out. They're talking. It's loud. It's echoing from all areas, you know. And they actually did an experiment on this, being a group of people that had the exact same question. They recreated the scene and they tested to see if you would be able to hear someone yelling from inside one of those mats. And they recreated the scene exactly how the surveillance shows everything. So a couple kids playing basketball, people coming in and out. And they found that they were unable to hear, and they were listening for the yell, the scream. So they were able to hear it even though they were listening for it. I get they could vaguely maybe make out and that's because they knew what they were listening for. So I guess it would be possible that no one heard him. The human body is not made to be upside down. Blood doesn't circulate that way, and the lungs are the two lightest organs in the body. The weight of the liver and stomach alone will crush the lungs if you're upside down for long enough, and they can make a person pass out within about 10 minutes, which is likely what happened to KJ if this were an accident. But still, we have the question how no one saw him. You would think all the kids going in and out of the gym, someone would have seen him. But we also have to remember we're talking about high school kids here. They are selfish by nature, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I mean, they're only in tune with their own schedule and their own thoughts and what's going on with them. So it's possible that they really didn't notice, or that even if they did, they didn't notice long enough that they even took a second glance. They were used to people climbing on those mats. It was a regular thing. There were 4 motion-activated cameras located in that gym. 4 corners, 4 cameras. And yet not one of those caught Kendrick going into the mat either, though. And that is suspicious to me. So people investigating this case have noticed that there are issues with the surveillance footage. Timestamps are off. There's missing footage, time jumps, jump frames. There have been many allegations that alterations have been made, and not just by the family, by detectives who have looked at these videos. A retired FBI agent took a look, and he found some issues as well. We're going to go into those later on, though, because I want to get into some of the allegations made by the family first. So a refresher on the people that are involved, as well as a few new people that we're going to be talking about throughout the remainder of this case. We have KJ's parents, Kenneth and Jacqueline. We have their lawyer, C.B. King. We have Benjamin Crump, who is civil rights attorney. You might know him more recently as George Floyd's family attorney. He's no longer a part of KJ's team, but at the beginning, he was very, very much involved. And again, we'll talk about that and more of the finale of these videos. In fact, a few of these people I'm going to name are no longer involved in KJ's case, such as Lee Touchton, who is with the NAACP, and Reverend Floyd Rose, who is SCLC president in the Georgia chapter. So the very next day after KJ's body was found, his parents, Kenneth and Jacqueline, enlisted the help of Reverend Floyd of the SCLC. And SCLC stands for Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and they're an African-American civil rights organization. Martin Luther King Jr. was the first president, and they work closely with the NAACP. So very important entities were on this case and helped with this case. They were asked by the Johnson family to look into KJ's case, and they made several allegations as to why they needed their help in this matter. They wanted an independent investigation of the case, as they truly believed that their son's case was impeding his civil rights. So they filed a lawsuit, a $100 million lawsuit, and in it were the allegations. Allegation 1, Kendrick's family wasn't allowed to see his body. So a lawsuit was filed by the Johnson family, and in it, this was the first allegation that they made. However, Sunday, January 13th, Kenneth Johnson was invited to properly identify his son. Though it was 3 days later, technically about 2, but they were able to go and view the body, and he did go. But I could see, 3 days is pushing it. Like, normally you would expect to see your loved one that day, right? So I don't know what took so long, but that is when he was invited to go. The body was still in Valdosta, Georgia, and hadn't been moved yet. But the following day, the body was scheduled to be transferred to the GBI in Macon, Georgia. And the family said, we want to see this body before it leaves Valdosta. And so they were invited to see and make the proper identification. The GBI is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and they are top-notch when it comes to handling crimes and crime scenes. The FBI would have been just the icing on the cake here as far as helping them out with this case. The GBI would have been completely well-equipped to handle this on their own. So we have a lot of people on this. Upon seeing his son, Kenneth said that his handsome son looked nothing like himself. He also made another shocking claim. Now, he was shown the body by James Thornton from the CSI in Valdosta, and he's the one who took all the photos and the videos of the crime scene. So allegation number 2 is his shocking claim. Kenneth said that the room that KJ's body was in felt much warmer than he had expected it to. Now, there have even been people saying that it was the cooler wasn't even turned on, or that the heat was turned up in the cooler. So I think what that means, or what they meant to say by that, is that it actually the cooler was turned down, making it not very cold in there. And the reason that this was concerning is obvious. It's because it was insinuated that this was done purposely to speed up decomposition and, in essence, get rid of evidence, right? It makes everything decompose quicker, so we're losing evidence the longer that body has been decomposing. However, I don't think that they could do that without compromising other bodies that were in there. And I can't imagine that he was the only body in there, though I don't know. But if this was used as a tactic to eliminate evidence, it would definitely throw off everything, even the time of death and manner of death, possibly. Allegation number 3. So there are discrepancies in reports from law enforcement and EMTs. The EMTs who examined KJ's body while still in the gym had conflicting statements than what was written in the police report. Allegedly, the EMTs noticed a bruise on the right side of KJ's jaw. And this was not mentioned by the GBI in the autopsy report. The photos looked like he was beaten, yet at the same time, they were consistent with lividity and 24 hours of decomposition. Lividity does look like bruising, so they were kind of saying that's what he would look like if this happened. Chris Prine told the parents that KJ entered the mat feet first, and that when he bent over to grab his shoe, he got stuck and couldn't get out, which we can all agree would be impossible. We talked about the measurements of those mats already, and the fact that he could even fit in them would be difficult enough, let alone bend over and grab a shoe out. So 2 days later, though, the family is called back and told that they must have misunderstood. What they meant to say was that KJ had entered the mat head first, not feet first. Okay, we got it. The family aren't the only ones who were becoming outraged by all of these inconsistencies. The public had had enough of it as well. There were just too many inconsistencies that the best were working on this case. You got the FBI, the GBI. Why are there any inconsistencies here? You know what I'm saying? So it was questionable from the start. Monday, January 14th, KJ's body was transferred to the GBI CSIU for the autopsy. A man by the name Stephen Owens was the driver. Now, he was the same driver that transported KJ's body from the gym to the Valdosta crime lab, and now he would be doing this transport as well. In fact, any and all transport of KJ was done by Steve Owens. So the only one who ever moved his body was Steve Owens. The autopsy was done the same day, as we talked about briefly in the last video. No foul play was noticed, and his death was ruled an accident, cause of death being positional asphyxia. It was believed that asphyxia happened quickly from the abdominal area, weighing down on the lungs, coupled with the compression of the mat. This impeded his ability to fully expand his lungs. The blood was said to be what is called a postmortem purge, and that was from all the blood rushing to his head, and what looked to be bruising was from lividity from all of the blood pooling in his head and face. Now, this is an image that was extremely startling to anyone who has seen it, let alone imagine it being your own child. So it would be horrific. And after the autopsy, the body was transported again by Steve Owens to the Harrington Funeral Home. The funeral home owner, Antonio Harrington, offered to provide these services to the Johnson family for free, and they were going to prep KJ for burial at no charge. And it was said in court documents that after Antonio Harrington saw KJ's body and the condition of his face, that he provided some additional advice to the family, which was to get a second autopsy, or that they might want to get another autopsy. So this is strange because at the time, the results from the first autopsy hadn't even come out yet. They had literally just done the autopsy that day and then transported the body. So why would he say that? Allegation number 4. So here we have another unfortunate loss of evidence. KJ's clothes and personal effects. Protocol would usually be that after the autopsy, all the clothing and personal effects are put in the body bag with the body and then sent to the funeral home together. And is the funeral home that gives those belongings back to the family. This did not happen. The funeral owner, Antonio Harrington, called the GBI in Macon, Georgia, asking where KJ's clothes were. And he was told that all of his clothes and personal effects were placed in the body bag with KJ. And there's even an inventory report that Steve Owens, the transporter, signed off on stating this. Yet, only the broken headphones that were wrapped around his hand were in that body bag, and these clothes have never been found. Allegation number 5. The clothes were destroyed to get rid of evidence. So obviously the family believes that these clothes were destroyed to get rid of evidence. And where are they? No one has taken any responsibility for these missing clothes. Like, we don't know. We put them in the bag. If they're not there, I don't know what happened to them. Someone has to know what the hell happened to them. Do you agree? I mean, they don't just vanish into thin air. The family held a protest seeking answers for these questions, and they had many supporters seeking the same. They gathered around the courthouse and they demanded these answers. And Kenneth and Jacqueline, as well as 5 others, were arrested for obstruction during this process. They were blocking people from going in and out of the courthouse. They actually made a chain holding hands with each other in front of the entrance and refused to let anyone in or out. While they were arrested, they did, however, gain this national attention that they were seeking. And Reverend Floyd even went as far as putting his home up in order to bail them out of jail. You remember, Reverend Floyd is the SCLC president. So Kenneth and Jacqueline made a very bold statement when this happened, saying, "We don't think he was murdered. We know he was murdered." But the problem here is, at the time, they didn't know that. We still don't know that. So that is a very bold statement to say. They had no evidence to back that up. They had a gut feeling, as most parents have. But And that gut feeling was telling them that there was evidence to back up the fact that he was murdered, that this was not an accident. And they just needed someone to listen to them, to go seek out this evidence so that they could prove it. After this, there was a flood of information brought out by CNN. And CNN was definitely more biased towards the family. The only information that CNN put out about this case was information that was leading towards the side that he was murdered. And let me just say that it is human to push a narrative that you believe, that you want to believe. But you need to be factual and you need to know both sides. I try to do this with every single case that I bring to you. The media has always been very good at pushing the side that they believe the narrative of. So, which is obviously why we always have conflicting media outlets. And, you know, to just throw out two of the main ones, we have Fox News and we have CNN. Both push one narrative that they believe in. And they're completely different sides than each other. But neither one posts facts on both sides. Neither one, in my opinion. But there are two sides to everything. And this is why everything is so screwed up these days. We don't have any media outlets that report facts of both sides of anything. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. The protest was about the case not being looked at as a homicide from the beginning. Yet, according to Chris Pine, it was. And it seemed, from what we know so far from the first video that I put out, that it was. So one of the things that the family did was have the postmortem photo of KJ's face printed onto t-shirts and poster boards. Now, here's the thing with that. There are two postmortem photos circulating the internet. One was taken by the medical examiner before the autopsy was performed, and one was taken after the autopsy had been performed, before his face was reconstructed by the funeral director. And this was taken by Kenneth, allegedly at the funeral home. So the photo that the family took is said, or the photo that the family is said to have used was the photo taken after the autopsy was complete. So there had been additional trauma to the face when that photo had been taken. And keep in mind, he's no longer alive. So there is no blood flow. There is no any of that. So when you do that, and we're going to get into that. And I just want to right now say this is going to get a little bit graphic. I'm going to explain it. I'm not going to show pictures, but I am going to explain what the deal is with these photos and why it makes a little bit of a difference which photo was. So while both of these images are extremely graphic, no matter which one you look at, they're graphic, and the one does look a little bit worse than the other, but they both would make me think the same thing that I think. So, and from what I understand of an autopsy, let's go into this. They're not gentle. Okay, the person's no longer alive. It's a body, and while they are very precise in what they are doing, they are looking for information as to how that person passed away, and there are certain things that they need to do in order to do that. And it's not pleasant. And the body does go through some things, and this is even more trauma being put on the body. And then they go to the funeral home after, and then the funeral director or whomever is taking care of the body is in charge of kind of fixing that. So they rebuild the face, they rebuild the body, they fill it in areas to make it look much more presentable in cases where it doesn't. But no matter what, a deceased body is not pleasant to look at. And especially after an autopsy is done, you are putting more trauma on the victim, or on the body. So, to be completely honest, I think that Kenneth Johnson, they used that photo because that was the photo that he had. That was the photo that he took the other one was that the medical examiner took. I don't know that they had access to that photo at the time that they made these shirts. And remember this too, they hadn't really seen the body. So he took this photo at the funeral home. I don't know why he didn't take it before that. I don't know. This is alleged what is the issue here. So basically what people are saying is he used the worser of the two photos, or the worst of the two. I don't know if worser is not a word, but the worst of the two photos to kind of get the public more riled up as a tactic, as, kind of a, you get what I'm trying to say. So I just think that was the photo that he had, but I could be wrong. Autopsy 2, May 1st, 2015. So the family was granted their request for exhumation and a second autopsy. Kendrick is exhumed, and the second autopsy is to be performed by a man by the name of Dr. William Anderson, and he's a very well-known pathologist from Florida. So June 15th, 2015, Dr. Anderson begins the autopsy. And as he makes the first incision into Kendrick and begins to open the body up, he is startled at what he finds. KJ's body is filled with newspaper. Yeah, you heard me right. There were no organs inside of Kendrick's body. Both his body and skull were filled with newspaper. Newspaper. Of course, this was an absolute outrage. And not just to the family, to everybody who heard about this. And there were a few different explanations about this and how it could have happened. And let's go into those. Explanation 1. Sherry Lang from the GBI claimed that during the autopsy, the organs were removed as a protocol. Okay, yes, we know that. They are placed in bags, and after that, the organs are placed back into the body cavity. Well, yes, that is what normally happens. Go on. So she says that this was done by Dr. Kraft, and the body was sent to the funeral home with all of these organs in those bags in the body. But while this is protocol, she stated this, and this is her words: when the body left the GBI, the organs left with it. How does she know this? She's not the one who performed the autopsy. She's not the one who put the organs back in there. So how did she know for a fact that this was done? Is she going off the word of somebody else? Dr. Kraft is who performed that autopsy, and Dr. Kraft must have said that this is what she did to Sherry Lang, or Sherry Lang is just doing her job and protecting the GBI. Explanation 2. Antonio Harrington, the funeral home owner, he claimed that no organs had been with the body, and that when the organs usually don't come with the body, it's because they're disposed of or whatever. It's standard procedure when there's no organs that come with the body to fill the empty space in the body cavities with materials such as sawdust or cotton. But Kendrick Johnson was filled with newspaper. So what? They were fresh out of sawdust and cotton, so they were like, hey, go grab me the Tribune over on the table over there in the kitchen. Like, what was that all about? Talk about disrespect, right? Then we have explanation 3. Lowndes County Coroner Bill Watson. Now, he claimed that the organs had been too badly decomposed and that they had been disposed of before the body was sent to the funeral home, saying it would have been during the autopsy that they were disposed. Well, Dr. Kraft, Dr. Marianne Gaffney Kraft, did the autopsy. But supposedly she told Sherry Lang that everything was in there, so I don't know what's going on here. Now, Bill Watson is not the one who performed the autopsy. So saying it would have been is no proof that it was, right? And none of these 3 people communicated with each other at all, apparently, because they all had something different to say about it. You know, first it said the organs were in fact sent with the body to by the GBI. Then it was said that by the funeral home that the organs were not with the body, which means that they couldn't have been sent by the GBI. And then it was said by the coroner, who had nothing to do with any of it, and did not perform this actual autopsy or study the organs, saying that they were gotten rid of because they were badly decomposed. Now, while he is the coroner and he would know whether or not they were decomposed or not, it's like, why is he saying this and not Dr. Kraft? Like, where's Dr. Kraft in all of this? And I looked. There is no statements from Dr. Kraft that I can find stating from her what happened to these organs. And then we also have the clothes, don't forget. So we have vanishing clothing and vanishing organs, both of which contain evidence, right? There's either evidence on those items or in the organs that it was an accident, or there's evidence that it wasn't. And now we don't have them. That is a big, big problem. Dr. Anderson's report stated that the organs removed at the initial autopsy were not present within the body, but he did not indicate he opened the body cavity for inspection, nor did he provide details of how the body was embalmed. So I guess what they're trying to say is that they're not sure if he's even knows what he's talking about. Repeated requests to the family's lawyers to allow the Times access to the photos reportedly showing these sales flyers and newspapers in Kendrick's body cavity, as reported by CNN, have gone unanswered. The lawyers have also not replied to the paper's request to conduct an interview with pathologist Anderson. So basically, the Valdosta Times wrote an article about this, and they asked the family's lawyer for these photographs as proof that they really did find the body stuffed with newspaper. But they have not gotten a response back, and Dr. Anderson, who performed the second autopsy, isn't responding with any type of interview or anything, so he's not able to be questioned. I guess that's kind of leaving it open for speculation that they could be lying, though I don't know why they would. Either way, why would they lie and say it was newspaper? The organs weren't there. That's the issue here, not what the body... It only makes it worse that it was newspaper that was filling the body, but that's not the main issue here. The main issue here is that there's no organs, and nobody was ever told that his organs had been gotten rid of. So the organs were studied, though, however, because the first autopsy report shows this. So we have that, but they were unable to do a second study. So that is quite unfortunate. So there are 3 places that these organs could have gone missing from, in my opinion. And that is either from the Lowndes County Medical Examiner's Office, the GBI in Macon, Georgia, the funeral home, or the transport team, which in this case was a one-man team by the name of Steve Owens. He signed off on the clothing as well, and those were gone too. So it's just very interesting. So in 2014, the family files a civil suit against the funeral home for this, and they alleged that that he disposed of the organs to hide evidence, that Antonio Harrington, the funeral owner, did this. They also went on to say that there was neglect of KJ's body, and that they had deliberately withheld the condition of KJ's body. They also alleged that the funeral home purposely disposed of the clothing and the organs, and that they never told the family that he was stuffed with newspaper. Antonio Harrington was investigated, and it was found that no laws had been broken. Antonio stated that he was told that the organs were disposed of by the coroner prior to receiving the body. And while filling a body with newspaper is certainly not an acceptable standard, it is not illegal, though it should be. And keep in mind, they offered to do this for free. So it's possible and I hate to say this, but it is possible that they did this to cut corners, making it cheaper. I don't know. I think that is in horrible taste, to put it lightly. But if it was an innocent thing, it was because they're cheap and they did it cheaply. Or maybe they do that with all of their bodies because they're cheap. In my opinion, you offer to do a service for free, then you do it right, no matter what. I mean, what is the matter with people? You offer it for free, so you cut corners? Like I said, it's possible that he cut corners on everybody. But, I mean, you're dealing with someone's loved one. Yes, to you, because you deal with it every day, it's just a body. But to the family, it isn't. It is their loved one. And that is so disrespectful to not follow normal protocol when it comes to how the body is filled if there are no organs. So back to the second autopsy. Now the organs can not be studied again because they're no longer present. And what was found, though, with what they had, which was the rest of the body, was blunt force trauma to the right neck, consistent with an inflicted injury. Unexplained apparent blunt force trauma. That's what Dr. Anderson concluded. So, cause of death was not consistent with positional asphyxia. Examination of the previously and dissected area and suctioning of the skin reveals evidence of full thickness cutaneous hemorrhage extending to the subcutaneous fat. Now, Dr. Anderson believed a single blow to the head or neck and no positional asphyxia due to lack of fluid in the lungs. Now, that was just a lot to unpack, so let me break that down. Basically, what he's saying is when he re-examined the body, he found part of the neck to look as though it had hemorrhaged. And based off of this, and based off of in the first autopsy report, it must have been written that the lungs weighed a certain amount. Okay, so while it doesn't say there's no, and I looked at the autopsy report and here it is, it says the weight of the lungs. Now, normal weight of the lungs is this. So had there been fluid in the lungs would have weighed more. They would have been heavier. And so based off of this, Dr. Anderson said that they weren't heavy enough to show that there would have been fluid in there. Therefore, it couldn't be positional asphyxia. It has to have meant that he was dead before this. Like, the cause of death was not asphyxia. That he was already gone, I guess, basically, is what he's saying. So, now I know what you're thinking right now. And he had no organs to look at. How is it? But the weight is very important. This is someone who does this for a living. Everything weighs a certain amount. A heart that weighs more, that's an enlarged heart. That could mean a heart attack. You know what I'm saying? So, I understand that based off the weight, they can tell whether or not there was fluid in there. So, the first autopsy report of the lungs stated that there was no fluid in the lungs, so how positional asphyxia was ruled as a cause of death in the first place is a huge question, right? So, why did they not notice that? Was there a narrative they were trying to push? Did they just not think that? Does the weight matter to them? Did they think that was a heavier weight and that it could show that there was fluid in the lungs? You know, I can't find a lot of this information, them bickering back and forth, because they didn't bicker back and forth. One doctor said this, the other doctor said that, and neither one of them was wavering on what they originally found. They stick by their findings. Dr. Anderson said that there is no evidence that he was beaten, but it was probably a single pressure application. I do think that it's purposeful for me to add that Dr. Anderson is an experienced trial expert hired to make findings in favor of the people that are paying him. That being said, however, the fact that the first autopsy, it was stated that the lung weight basically meant there was no fluid in the lungs definitely makes it difficult to conclude that positional asphyxia was the cause of death here. So even if you don't believe foul play was involved, it is possible that Kendrick could have been in a position where his hand or arm put that pressure on himself, you know, just in the position that he was in. And that should have been revealed in the first autopsy. You know, it's almost like they completely skipped over that part. If there was a hemorrhage to the side, and Dr. Anderson feels it could be a pressure or, that, remember how he was found? Is that possible that he almost, kind of cut off his own supply? I don't know, and this is one of those where it's like, I don't think we're ever going to know what truly happened. We just kind of have to hear all the facts and each make our own decision. Okay, so surveillance. Let's get back into that. So, of course, upon hearing this, they really wanted to look at the surveillance footage again. So, CNN hires Grant Fredericks and his company to go over the hundreds of hours of footage from the school. Grant Fredericks immediately felt that he did not have all the files. Right upon getting everything, he said, you know what? This isn't everything. He also believed that what he did have had been altered immediately. He said that there was a lot of poor image quality in certain frames and that files had been corrupted and they weren't playable and that many were processed incorrectly. It was said that a detective watched a portion of the video at school and then asked the school board tech operator to make a copy of the entire wing of the school for the full 48 hours before KJ was discovered and send it to him. And Grant felt that that should never have been left up to the school to decide what to provide and what not to provide to the police, especially if there was a question, of whether or not the school could have been held responsible. That footage should have all been seized by the GBI. There is data and there is metadata, and within this metadata is how you can tell if a file has been messed with or corrupted in any way or altered. Every time footage is copied, that metadata would be different. So it's never like getting the same footage directly off the hard drive. So the fact that he had that sent to him, it already altered that metadata just by making that switch. So you can't really tell whether or not it's altered at this point because it looks like the whole thing's been altered, is basically what I gather from this. So we also have the issue with the cameras in the old gym. So there are 4 cameras in the old gym, and all 4 seem to have been behaving badly. At least that day. 2 of the cameras that were working fine all morning decided to just stop recording at about 12:04 p.m. and they didn't pick back up again until 1:09 p.m. And these were the first and fourth of the 4 cameras. At 11:05 and 1:16 p.m., cameras 2 and 3 did the exact same thing. The camera in the hall outside of the gym, during the time the 4 cameras inside the gym had stopped, there were multiple students that went in and out of the gym, including 3 male students that entered just moments before KJ. When KJ walks into the gym, the camera says 12:59 p.m., but the camera, that's the one right outside the gym. But the camera inside the gym shows that he entered the gym at 1:09 p.m. Just when cameras 1 and 4 turn back on. Interesting. There is no footage of KJ going into the gym, and what is there is so blurry. There's no footage of discovery of KJ's body. You only see him being taken away on a stretcher. Lowndes County Sheriff's Department said, "What we produced to the sheriff is a raw feed with no edits." Lowndes County Sheriff's Office said, "My client has confirmed that the video was not altered or edited by anyone within the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office." Okay, but what about the school? So I watched a 2-part series on this, and it said that the footage of KJ and the mats didn't show because the positioning was off, and it just didn't show the mats set up in that area. So basically, the way the cameras were, they never showed that area. Also, it was said that the servers were separate from each other. So each server had its own internal clock, and they don't link up, which can lead to time differences between the servers. So police got 3 of the servers. So an example is one is recording the time is like noon. The other one, it may be 12:10, and the other one might be 12:04, and the actual time is 12:02. So they're saying that they can be off and that that's normal. I know, it's confusing as hell. Another issue with this footage is that some videos have the LHS, Lowndes County, or Lowndes High School timestamps, and some do not have it. So why do some and why don't others? At 1:25 p.m., third block is dismissed, and you can see KJ in the C wing, alone with a yellow folder at 1:27 p.m. So 1:27 p.m., KJ enters the old gym, and after this, there are no timestamps. Also in this case, in case you didn't catch that it shows them entering the gym at 1:27 p.m., not 1:09 p.m. So the ones with timestamps say 1:09 p.m. What we can see is 1:09, but these ones say 1:27. So the timestamps are all off in this, and I know it's very confusing and hard to follow. Just know that the timestamps don't ever really make sense. Another issue that has been talked about several times is the disappearing and reappearing students, which suggest jump cuts in the footage. And it's been said that the cameras are motion activated, that they're still. So they're still shots going at 1 frame per second. And they're activated with a change in lighting. So basically like the shadow of the student would cause that to go off. And they have to have like a few blocks in order to change order to trigger a recording. They're very sensitive, and there are delays, and it's all just super confusing, like I said. But I did want to remind you that in 2012, 2013, even 14 and 15, we just did not have the type of technology that we have today. And that does come into play a little bit later, in my opinion, because you have to remember, there was no HD, there was no 4K, there was no, they weren't able to the pictures were not clear. I mean, go back and look on your very first smartphone at the photos on that, and then look at what you got now on your new phone that you're using today. I mean, think of that. So, not an excuse at all, but we do have to keep that in mind. So, I want to remind you that, we're doing a series here, and this is kind of just going to be moving really quickly. I'm going to end this video right now, and I'm going to begin working on part 3, which I will put out the following day. This is YouTube. This is not me. If I could do it all on one, I definitely would. But unfortunately, it's just very difficult. Many creators are having issues right now. I'm sure you've probably noticed. I'm not the only one who's said this. So I will see you guys in part 3. Please like, subscribe, share, make some comments, and I will see you in a little bit.